Hi, friends. Welcome to Enlightened World Network. I'm Dr. Ruth Anderson here with Sue Broome. We are here for messages from our loved ones, messages from your loved ones, which sometimes is actually our loved ones. So we're so glad you're here with us. So while Sue was sharing that out to her folks, let me just share with you for a moment what it is that we do. When you write in the messages from Facebook that you would like to hear from one of your loved ones, you tell us who that person is. And then we work with Sue's card deck. You tell us who that person is. Is that you, Sue? And we work with Sue's card deck. You tell us who that person is. Is that you, Sue? And we work with
I'm trying to get it off. Trying to get it off. It's taking so long. Okay.
Did you get it?
Okay. You just keep going.
Okay. So Sue pulls up the cards that she made that is actually called Messages from Your Loved Ones, right, Sue? Your cards. Can you show us your cards?
Are you still there?
I am here.
Okay. I apologize. I'm trying to share it and Facebook, all of a sudden it's just like it was spinning and I had to cancel out of the page. And so anyway, I think I got it shared enough times.
Okay. Well, and I'm going to Restream is being strange, so let's try that again and see what that does.
I think Mercury is in retrograde. I think I heard that last week. That's why.
Okay.
Blame it on that.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah, well, we'll see if the chat thing will open up, but it doesn't look like it wants to. Okay, so we just might have to be smarter than Restream this morning. Figure out a way to see comments.
I was going to say, so if Restream isn't working, is there something that people need to know that will help them?
Yes. In order for your messages to be seen, I need you to, on Facebook, go to Enlightened World Network and see the video that we are creating right now. And that's where you can write your comments. You can't write your comments on Sue's pages because it's not going to be visible to us.
Yep. Okay. So, got it.
Okay. So, yeah, that's so weird. So anyway, what I was saying, Sue would, when we hear that you want to hear a message from your loved one, Sue will pull up her card deck that she made and shuffle through and see which card jumps out to her to be paid attention to. And then we read the energy around the card and around your loved one, and then we just share that out. So as soon as we get somebody's comments here that they would like to hear from somebody, we'll be able to do that. But Sue, let's talk about a couple things. Why don't you start with the meditation, your what you noticed from a meditation that we had done together a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, it was, and I honestly, I don't remember exactly what the meditation was, other than I think we were walking down a path. But so this was and I do know what, I think I know what date it was. I want to say it was from December 22nd. It was either December 16th or December 22nd. What was interesting with that, though, the meditation had absolutely nothing to do with loved ones.
That's right.
Yep. When afterwards, when Ruth and I were chatting, she had 3 different instances of loved ones coming to her through the meditation. And I think it's just really an awareness for people that when you are doing a meditation, that is it angels that are coming? Is it your guides that are coming? Is it your loved ones? And even, I don't think you did this, but something that would help if somebody is looking for a message or an encounter with their loved one is setting the intention before doing the meditation that I would like to have, a visit from my loved one, or I would like to get a message from my angel, setting it up ahead of time. But sometimes, you know what? They show up. And obviously, Ruth, you needed to hear those 3 messages that day.
Right. And they took me back, excuse me, they took me back in time to those moments that had happened to me in real life. And boy, the emotions were just right there as if it was just happening to me. So yeah, that was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And you hit on it. It took you back to when those emotions were heightened. So when someone transitions, if you are able to be with them, or if you're not able to be with them, your emotions are still heightened. And whether you're in a meditation now, so say that, like for me with my mom, I wasn't able to be with her. As an adult, I mean, the emotions are still there that she transitioned and I wasn't able to be there. But doing a meditation, and with that meditation, I set the intention that I wanted to be with her as she transitioned. And so that's how I remember it more than it actually was. And I know that it's a little different than yours, but it's in the same vein.
So what do you think that is? That setting that intention to be right there at that moment. I get it because you were her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I set that same intention for my friend's husband the other day. And I had to stop myself and ask, why am I setting that intention? Is that because there's something I'm to learn from this experience, or because I can support him, or because I can support my friend? What is it? I mean, it's a pretty interesting intention to set. Most people, when somebody's passing, go the other direction. It's a interesting core group of people that actually come together for that passing.
I do think I think it's all of the things you asked, it's like, yes, I think it's to help them transition. I think it's also to help, it feels like there's support that we get, even though we're not the one transitioning, there is support that we get as well as we are able to give. I think being in that space also, because Ruth, you have such a calming effect, such a peaceful effect on people. And so if someone, I'm getting chills, if someone is in a transitioning space, and whether you can see it or not, their soul is fine with it, but their 3D selves are like afraid. So you and anyone else that you're with, holding the space for them in that peace, in that calm, setting the intention that you are there and you are present with them, it helps them transition more peacefully. You think about if you are in a river, if you are in a canoe in a river and the river is flowing, which is easier, to allow the canoe or the whatever you're in to go with the flow, or paddle against it? And you are in that space helping them see that, oh, it's easier to go with the flow. And you might say, oh, when I was in that space, I was able to see their loved ones on the other side where they were maybe in a place of so much fear that they weren't able to see. It's like, oh, isn't that your mother? Isn't that your aunt? Isn't that, whoever?
Yeah. 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 Thank you for that. That does make sense to me. And I think we're just going to probably go through this, not being able to see any comments. But we do have a lot to talk about here about the passing over piece. So the friend that we helped to pass over, he just passed on Friday, actually. His name is Al, and Al was 89. And he, throughout his life, he was a tough cookie. He's like the heart of a marshmallow and a tough mountain man on the outside. So, and I have heard that how you pass is pretty symbolic of who you were in life. And I can tell you, the agitation stage for Al, holy cow.
Yeah.
So, but some of the conversations that happened with Al, because I would go and I would sit with him, he'd be lying in bed, and his wife, God bless her, who hadn't slept for, several days, would be trying to sleep next to him. So I'm sitting on a chair next to him. And we had interesting conversations. I mean, I have never spoken with him about angels, but we did during that time. So he started talking about Archangel Michael and Archangel Raphael. Well, I didn't know that he had read my book. My book was up on his nightstand. And so he started talking about that. And apparently he was raised Catholic, and he chose to not continue in that. But because he said there were parts of his religious upbringing that he liked and parts that he didn't. So he just sort of left the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting because at a couple points, actually, he was reaching above his head. Mm-hmm. And I said, Al, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. And he was able to have cohesive conversations with me, even mm-hmm. though a lot of the time he was like busy. I could tell he was busy. Yeah. And I said, Al, what are you doing? He said, I'm reaching. Mm-hmm. I said, what are you reaching for? And he said, the face of God. And I thought, oh, they are working. They're working on you. And this is good. This is exactly what needs to be happening here. Mm-hmm. And then later that day, he said, how's Shirley? And how's Irene? And I asked my friend later, I said, who's Shirley? And she goes, well, that's his sister, who of course has passed many years, right? And I said, well, who's Irene? And he said, that's his mother. Who of course has passed. And as the day went on, and he started getting into the agitated phase. So my job was to try to keep him not walking around because it wasn't safe. I mean, he was so weak and just, mm-hmm. If he was up, I was literally holding him onto the walker so he wouldn't just slump to the ground. And my other job was to keep him from pulling out his catheter. So, which was really awkward because he refused to keep clothes on and he refused to keep a blanket on. And it was just the agitated, right? Yep. And he was never mean to me. Mm-hmm. And I heard him tear apart the hospice nurses, right? So the mountain man was coming through. But boy, that agitated phase was it just took on a life of its own. It was all we could do to keep him safe at that point.
I have heard, I'm sorry, were you done?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I have heard and I have seen, trying to think, one for sure, where they try to pull off their clothes. They try to get out of bed. Sometimes they'll say they want to go home, but sometimes they try to pull off their clothes. And that is one of the signs, it's one of the things during hospice training, that's one of the things they tell you. And I never had anybody that had a catheter, but they had usually oxygen, and sometimes, other things hooked up, but usually in hospice, they don't have a lot of things hooked up to them. Just because of what hospice,
Right.
what their role is. But I know so this was a friend of mine, and she was in a nursing home, and she was nearing, and she kept trying to get out of bed. She wanted to go pack, she wanted to go pack to get home. And so I'd get her back in bed, and then she's going like this into the air. And I'm like, Mary, what are you doing? She said, there's angel buttons. And I'm getting chills. There's angel buttons. And I said, angel buttons? And she goes, yeah, but they're all grayed out. And I found it interesting because it's like, well, what does that, logical brain, what does that mean?
Mhm.
And I was talking with a friend of mine, and it's like, well, you think about it from a computer standpoint. If a button is gray, you can't push it.
It's not working.
It's not working yet. And sometimes it is, it's yet you haven't clicked on the right spot, or it's just, the whatever is processing. So I always found that interesting. But she was also, that same visit, she was trying to get out of her bed, take off her nightgown, and she was a woman that was so modest, and there's no way that she would be showing any part of her body.
Right. Yeah. So I was there with him for 9 hours. And then we called another friend and had another shift come in and spell me. Well, so she got the night shift. And it was like, I'm sorry, you're not going to be sleeping, because your job is like to just help him not kill himself, right? Just another odd thought. So a friend shows up early in the morning, and she goes, well, what I walked into was our friend Connie was trying to feed him. He was sitting on the couch. So he had left the bed. He's sitting on the couch completely naked, and she's trying to feed him breakfast. And I thought, yeah, I know how her night went. I know exactly how her night went. But one of the things Al kept saying was, I want to go home.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he knew where he was heading. He was no longer at that place of, I want to live. I want to live. He had switched over to, I want to die. Like, help me make this happen. And I remember with my friend Sylvia and with my father seeing that moment in time. And it's kind of a fascinating moment in time. And then when they're doing that, I want to die. As a light worker, you're going, what tools do I have? How can I possibly help with, obviously I can't smother you. My dad, God bless him, on his deathbed, he asked us to pick up the pillow and smother him. And it was like, I said, Dad, I love you, and I will not go to jail for you. So no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But as a light worker, I find myself asking, what can I do to support this request? Because I don't know what determines the moment Al is going to stop breathing. I don't know that. Is it a moment in time that was determined before you came into this world, and until it's 1:42 on Friday, it's not going to happen? I don't know.
But that's just it, Ruth. You don't.
Mm-mm.
Not for somebody else. It's up to them. And I can't remember who says this, but I think it's, is it Cryon? It might be Cryon. No, it's Abraham. Abraham Hicks.
Mhm.
I think it's Abraham that says every death is a suicide.
Oh,
So think about that. It's our souls, and I'm getting chills again. Our souls are in charge. It's not us. And yes, there are people that will do things to assist from the 3D realm, but there's also, if their soul, if it's not time for that soul to go, they ain't gonna go.
They're not going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's not up to you to know when someone else is going to transition. It is totally on them. What you can do is exactly what you did. You can support them in making them more comfortable, because obviously as this Al is going through all this stuff, he's still working out some things.
Yep.
That he has to be here for.
Yes.
Otherwise he'd be gone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it was funny at one point because he cried out. Now, keep in mind, Irene is his mother, right? At one point, he called out, "That's enough, Irene." I thought, okay, they're still working on business there between the two of them.
Yeah. Yep. Because we come here to learn. I mean, and you think about, now I've heard it talked about with, everybody has so many exit points.
Yeah.
And then you get to it's like, okay, well, all my 9 lives are done on my last exit point. But you also have all of these things to work through. And if he's not finished working through some stuff, and maybe it's, somebody that's still here. A lot of times it's people on the other side. So
Right.
even us here, don't feel just because somebody is on the other side that we can't work through some of the stuff that's going on with them, or that went on when we were 10. It can still be, we can still go through and work through that. And I think that is another reason that we're here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, one of the other things that I thought was fascinating, Terry Angel and I went to his hospice room, and he, walked in, and the first thing we noticed, and I had noticed this at the house too, was that he was having more and more other souls show up.
Mhm.
Right. So that's why I was so surprised on Sunday that he was still with us come Friday, because man, the crowd was there. They were ready for him, but he
Yeah.
wasn't ready for some reason. So we walked into his room, and the first thing we both, wow, throat chakra.
Mhm.
The first thing we noticed was how many souls were in the room, and the place was packed.
Yeah.
And we saw Archangel Michael, Archangel Azrael, and Archangel Zadkiel. But it was interesting because they were all large. I mean, sometimes they're more normal size, and other times it's like, I am here, right? And they were all three big. And this was on Wednesday. Now, keep in mind, he died on Friday. So on Wednesday, and there's no time in the ethereal realm. I totally get that. But here we look at the clock, and it's like, wow, all these beings are here for him, including the archangels. And he doesn't go for 48 more hours. Like, what is that about? So one of the interesting things to me was, I'm going to digress. On Sunday, Al was struggling with the catheter. And he said, I have to get up and pee. I know he's got a catheter. I said, Al, it's fine. Just pee right here in the bed. It's not a problem. It's okay. And he says, but I can't pee during the ceremony.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And I thought, you're right, Al. There is going to be a ceremony for you. And he's feeling it. He's seeing it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. But of course, me and my human state, I said, it's okay, pal. It's okay, Al. You can pee during the ceremony. It's okay. But obviously, he wasn't going to Peter in the ceremony because that would have been in the spirit realm and his body. But so what was so interesting in the hospice room was not only were we seeing, Irene and Shirley and the other folks he had loved and lost, his brother Jim, he was having quite a conversation with Jim. There were handmaidens. And that's what I wanted. One of the things I wanted to make sure to talk to you about. I have seen in several meditations these handmaidens that work with Divine Mother. And they were working to prepare Al in spirit for his passing. And I have said to Divine Mother, I don't want to come back into this realm again. I want to be one of the handmaidens. So maybe that's where I get to see them, because I've said that. Now, I don't know if I still believe that I want to do that, but at the time I did. So watching these handmaidens and the work that they're doing. And Sue, I was reminded of my own mother's passing. And you all did a beautiful session. Hi, Sandy, if you want to hear, Sandy, hello. If you want to hear a message from one of your loved ones, please write in the chat who it is that you're wanting to hear from. But all of the beautiful women at Enlightened World Network did a session for my mother as she was passing. And Sue, your mother showed up. And your mother was part of what helped prepare my mother in spirit for her passing. And I saw other women there, and I didn't know who they were, right? I knew who your mother was, which is funny because I never met your mother, but I knew who she was in spirit. But there were other women there, and now I understand that they were Divine Mother's handmaidens.
There was a lot of mothers there, because I think Sherry's mother was there.
Linda Dirk's mother was there.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, wow, it's really interesting. So many mothers here to assist your mother. And even now I'm getting like full body chills on that. How whether you knew her or not, how people, because we're connected, so how our loved ones can connect with each other, assisting with different things. If everything I said just made, if that all makes sense.
No, it made perfect sense.
Yeah, it was beautiful, because I almost felt like all the mothers were doing a circle around, supporting your mom. And you, I mean, because you were just as much a part of that circle. It wasn't just around your mom, because it was around both of you with that support. Yeah.
But the whole thought of Divine Mother's handmaidens, there is so much.
Never heard that.
Yeah, isn't that cool? There is so much support for us when we pass.
There absolutely is. And I think, I've heard people say, and maybe you and I have talked about this. So if there's somebody that's like, well, I don't want to see them standing on the other side, greeting me. And it's like, you know what? Then they won't be the ones there. It's going to be who the person who is transitioning. It's going to be who they get their support from, and like you said, even Al said, he's reaching for God's face. It's like, well, of course God's going to be there, whether we can all see him or not, but Al did, which is beautiful. Just absolutely beautiful.
Well, and that was 5 days before he died. In my goofy little brain, I just thought that this all happened in a shorter time period. Not necessarily. I mean, these things can take a long, long time.
Well, and you said going back to he was raised Catholic, but there were some things that he didn't agree with, so he walked away from it all. So there were definitely some things from that he was still working through. Whether it, it doesn't matter how many years he'd been away from the Catholic Church, because God, yes, God is everywhere. God is with, not just in the Catholic Church, but there were some things that he probably still had God associated with the Catholic Church. And so he needed to get those things figured out on a soul level.
Right. Right.
I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, but when my mom transitioned, she was young. And I found it interesting. She was 32, and right now the time is 32. It's 11:32, which is interesting. But how I see from the time she had her accident to the time she transitioned, I see her in this boat, kind of like that Robin Williams movie. I can't remember what it's called. I need to watch that movie again, but where she's in this boat and it's kind of, it's a rowboat, it's kind of foggy, and she's going through all of these things, trying to figure out, I have a decision. I have a difficult decision because she's young. She's got 4 young kids, and either leave that or go, and she was very active in the church, and she had a lot of friends. And so I see this, there was a lot of things that her soul was working through, just because we can't see what's going on. So you talk about the 5 days, it's like, well, maybe it was 5 days, what it seems like to us, and it could have been a split second energetically.
Yep. I'm just writing Sandy a note. She had sent a little note. Well, and sometimes I wonder if they aren't hanging around for something to happen here that doesn't even happen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for prodigal son to come home, or 2 sisters to make up, or
Right.
Oh yeah, there's all that.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know with my dad, he was trying to live until he had a sort of near-death experience where he was taking a nap, and then he goes to the light and he goes down the corridor and he's hearing all of this cheering as he's coming through. Right, good job, welcome home. And then they said, nope, sorry, you got to go back. It's like nap time, and he was crushed.
Yeah.
And that's when he went, okay, I want to go back there. What can I do to go back there? So that's when he flipped over into I'm done trying to live. Now I want to die. He actually made it 18 hours later, but that was a long 18 hours for him.
Right.
And why was I going into that?
Because it could have been a split second, because there was still stuff.
Yeah. So it ended up, those 18 hours were incredibly healing for family members with him.
There you go.
Yeah, because he could have gone 18 hours earlier, but then that healing wouldn't have taken place.
Yeah, that is huge. So you think about his soul, and it looks like his physical body has got, on its last second, but the soul is saying, well, wait a minute, I can still assist with the healing for the family that's going on. And so let me do a few things here, whatever he's got going on. And look at the beautiful transition, because now they have, they're probably in it's going to sound weird, but a better position to feel less grief. And that's not the word I'm looking for, but it's easier for them. It's they're in a better place to see that he's in a better place, and they feel much more comfortable with his transition because he was ready, because he helped them see that he was ready.
Not only that, he helped them see how much he loved them.
Mm.
Where so much of his life was lived in solitude. So, 4 kids that he didn't need.
That he didn't know.
Didn't need.
Oh, he didn't need.
Yeah. We were all oops babies, 4. You think they would have figured that out by now. But yeah, so my parents were so close to each other, they didn't need anybody else. And
Yeah.
so we didn't have a role in that relationship. And it took on the deathbed for 2 of us to hear, I love you. Thank you for being here. I can't believe you're here for me.
Yeah, that's huge.
It was huge. And it healed so much of that pain of you sort of didn't care if we were here or not.
Nothing like wait until the last minute.
Right. But at least we got it. Whereas
Right.
the other ones didn't get it.
And it seems like it's the last minute for us. But yet, if there is no time and space. So it's, yeah, I'll tell you, life is interesting, isn't it? Life and transitioning is interesting.
It really is. Well, and the other interesting thing about his passing, as he was laying there in front of us, my sister on one side and I'm on the other, he would tell us what he was experiencing, which was fascinating for me. At one point, he said, it's wrapped around, it's like it was wrapped around his waist and it wouldn't release. And I almost feel like he was talking about his soul being wrapped around like his 3rd chakra and it wouldn't release. And he's looking at it like, why can't I unhook this? Why won't it go? It was just so interesting to hear his comments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really beautiful that he was able to share that with you as well. Because obviously he wasn't in like a lot of pain or anything that he, was able to do that. Because so many times I think back to all the people that in hospice that I was with, vigil is what they called it. The last 48 hours is what they were anticipating. And so many of them were on morphine because otherwise they'd be in so much pain. And there was that one woman that was so agitated, and they couldn't get even the liquid into her until a couple hours after she needed it. And so she was the one that sat up in bed and looked at me and go, "Why are you here?"
Oh, ouch.
Scared the crap out of me because she'd been, eyes closed before that. Why are you here? And that kind of back up. Yeah. So yes, there's so many different experiences that they're having, but just, and this is the one thing when people are getting ready to transition and they are unconscious, they appear to be unconscious to us, be very aware that their ears, that's the last to go, the last sense to go. They know what you're saying. So it's like, say loving things. Don't say, well, should we pull the plug, honey?
I know. My friend Bev was telling me the other day that they were all the kids were around her mother at her deathbed. And, they're watching the heartbeat. And I mean, it's like what they're thinking are like last minutes, right? So they're having that conversation, and the mom opens her eyes and she goes, "I'm not dying now." And she was right. She wasn't dying then. But that was a big lesson. You think they're on their way out. You think they can't hear, and guess what? They really can.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other really weird thing to me about that, Al had hearing loss, but he didn't on his deathbed, because I was able to just have a normal conversation with him.
That's so funny.
And he heard everything because he was answering me appropriately. And he didn't have his hearing aids in. So what in the world is happening that on their deathbed, sometimes the hearing loss goes away and they can hear just fine?
And even as you're saying that, you think about how many people have hearing loss, and maybe part of it is because there's so much stuff that goes on in the world that they just don't want to hear. So it's like they don't. But the conversation that he was having with you, he wanted to hear.
Yeah, it was an important conversation. It was about fear of death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, wait, all of the beautiful blessing that you were able to be there with him,
Yeah.
the healing for him that happened to help him get to the point where he was ready to transition. So you look at all of that, and even him reading your book.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, there's more to this than the Catholic Church. So how beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a real gift. And the nice part about it too is that now when my friend is going through her emotions of all of it, I can say, "Do you remember I told you he said this? And oh yeah, he talked about that, and this is what he said." And it's helping put the pieces together for her and helping her with her grieving. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think even for her moving forward on her spiritual path, whatever that means for her, is going to be so much smoother. It's kind of like the boat has been now righted, so she is able to go with the current, versus she was fighting things just as much. I mean, how many times is it a spouse that's like, no, they hang on, hang on, do everything you can to save them. And it's like, well, maybe their soul is to the point where it's like, no, it's time for me to go. Yeah, truly amazing and beautiful.
Yeah, it was, yeah, it meant a great deal to be able to be there and support in that way. So Sandy, AB,
Okay.
and this is the only one we've got time for today, friends. So I'm glad we only got one. Sandy said, first of all, she had said she's struggling with her work. Current job, she's hated it since she joined last August. Feels like quitting and she's had enough. And I said, "Are you hoping for a message from a loved one?" She said, "Yes, grateful for any messages about my work situation." Sandy H. Obb, AB.
So I'm going to tell you what I did before, while I was waiting to come on with you. I thought I went through the angel deck and I pulled out messages from the angels that, and I whittled it down. So there's about this many that I didn't have in there. That could be a message from angels or loved ones. And this is perfect because it sounds like Sandy needs inspiration from the spiritual realm.
Yeah, period.
Whether it's a loved one, whether it's an angel.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that the angels had me do this is because we do have support from angels, from our loved ones. And sometimes it does, it's like, well, that's something so-and-so would say, but that's also something the angels would say. It's like, yes.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant because you've never done that. And we've done this together for over a year now, and you've never done that before. So that must have been for Sandy. So again, the angels were watching.
The angels and, oh, there it is. The angels and loved ones and all of the above. I am grateful. This one, Sandy's probably thinking, well, that doesn't sound like something if I'm having a difficult situation at work. Okay, but this actually, I am grateful. It speaks so many volumes. So I'm going to go back to when I was in the corporate world. Before I left, it was getting nasty. And I had been there for over 30 years. The last review that I had, it was basically my manager. She was my director. I was a manager. She was my director. I went, is it you stabbing my back or is it somebody else? I said that in my review because she had this whole thing and it's like, I had, this is what so-and-so said, blah, 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 blah. And I had emails to back it up that it's like, well, none of that's true, but you just dinged me on my review. Now, all of this to say, I was not feeling grateful. I was ready to say and walk out the door that day. However, with all of the anger and all of the angst and resentment that I had at that time would not have been a good space for me to move forward. So I am grateful, and I am, honest to gosh, I totally forgot this until just now. So after a few days of cool off, I came back, and it was at that point in time, every single meeting that I was in, or every single situation I was in throughout the day, I started listing 3 things about it that I appreciated or I was grateful for. And sometimes it was like, I like the blouse she's wearing, it was like that. But I had to see that before I could walk away, because otherwise I was leaving in anger versus grateful for all that I did get. I was there for over 30 years. I loved what I did for so much of that time. There's people that I worked with 30 years ago that I'm still friends with. So I wanted to bring that into the gratitude into me going forward in whatever my endeavors were going to be. So, wow, Sandy, look for the gratitude in your life in all parts of it.
So Sandy, and she said she's close to the angels. So that makes sense that the angels would, request a special message from them.
That's funny.
Yeah. So Sandy, what I was saying, it's making sense, but it was an interesting visual. If you had a bit of paint and then you went like this and stamped it and the paint splattered, that's what the energy around your job is looking like. And you can either look at feeling so depleted because there's this heavy thing that's on top of you, making your energy splatter all over. So you can either be there or you can be in the energy of the paint splatters. Because as I was looking at those paint splatters, beautiful colors coming through, beautiful combinations of colors and swirls of color. Now, would that energy and color have been the same had you not had that experience of being in that workplace, having that heavy weight come down on you? I don't know that. are there things that you can glean from your time there that you can then take and run with, where you are better off because of having had that experience and those experiences? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I can totally see that paint too. It's like, because think about paint splatters. It's like, sounds kind of weird, but look at how many pieces of art are made out of paint splatters.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like gleaning. I like that word. It's gleaning, because the relationships that you've built, or the things that you've learned, not only from a earthly, 3D, but also from the energetic viewpoint. Maybe one of the things you've learned there is, oh, I'm so great at clearing my energy now. Or one of the things is, so keep in mind, I was a manager in the IT division. Okay. IT is, computer kind of stuff, and it's very not angelic. But my office, I had tons of crystals. I had a couple angel pictures. And one of the pictures that I had was above my doorway, that I could see that people couldn't if they were standing in my doorway. And there was a guy, very 3D, he was another manager. He's leaning in my doorway. He always used to stop by and give me a hard time. And he's leaning in my doorway. And I look up at the picture, the painting that I have, and I look at him, I said, you do realize by leaning in my doorway like that, you're getting angel stuff on you. And he starts laughing. So me being there, in my gratitude, I was also able to share different ways of seeing things. So Sandy, what are you able to share? And no matter what the situation is.
Right. She said the job is draining, horrible energy and bad conditions, but I'm sure that I will grow from it after I leave.
So here's another thing with saying that. And I know, Ruth, you and I have talked about this. It's like, unplug from this place where you're working and make sure that you are plugged into the divine, that's where you're getting your energy. And if you feel that people are plugging into you, you can actually just go like this and imagine that you are unplugging, because if you're feeling drained, it's probably because somebody's plugging into you, trying to pull your energy. So unplug. Tell them you have access to the divine just like I do. That in and of itself might shift things a lot.
That's great, Sue. Yeah. I do want you, Sandy, to try to key into those paint splatters and really look at those vibrant colors. And I think maybe the message is, no matter how oppressive that job is, it cannot squash the beauty that's in you, the complex, intricate beauty that is you. They didn't squash that. Sometimes we are in jobs just to show us what we don't want. And that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
There's this is a feng shui thing, and I don't remember the why this is beneficial, but I find it interesting that I have this mug with the yellow on it, because one of the things that I remember in feng shui, it's like, put even if it's a little post-it of yellow, put it on the back of your chair.
Oh, interesting.
And I honestly, I don't remember like I said, the whys and wherefores of why that, but I do remember it was yellow, and it's like, oh, that's interesting that I have the yellow mug today.
Well, in yellow, the solar plexus, right? Your center of self-esteem. How do you see yourself in the world? So just by buoying up, what does that say?
Be the reason someone smiles today.
Oh, nice. nice. Just even buoying up the yellow, even wear yellow underwear that day, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but it's a good reminder to you
Mhm.
that you are all that. You are amazing.
Yeah.
And don't let them get to you.
And speaking of underwear, this is probably a little big, but if you have a clearing stone, like a selenite or a tourmaline, black tourmaline is good for clearing, or hematite, which like this ring has hematite in it. If it's small enough, you can stick it in your bra. I used to have one of my, honestly, because I used to have a bowl of rocks in my office, and I freely, take one, whatever you need. And I had one of my folks, she said she would go home at night, she would take off her bra, crystals would go flying because sometimes she had 4 and 5 in her bra.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, all kinds of ideas, Sandy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and just like a relationship, when you leave a relationship, just remember, why did I get into this relationship? What did I think I was going to get out of it? What did I actually get out of it? And as Sue said, if you choose to go with gratitude and go with grace.
Yeah.
If nothing else, show them grace as you walk out the door.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah. And Sandy, whatever you choose, the angels are going to be right there with you, whether you're choosing to stay or whether you're choosing to go. So thank you for your question today. Sue, thank you so much for being here. And next month, we're going to have the electronics working for us. I can feel that. So Prachetta, if you were on and we didn't get to you, I'm sorry, sweet thing. So friends, thank you for being here. Thanks for this time with Sue and me. And I hope that this conversation about death and passing over was interesting to you, because it clearly was to me and Sue. So much love. Take good care. Thanks all. Bye-bye.